COVID originated in a laboratory in America. That technology was transferred to this Wuhan Institute of Virology, and there it emerged and went out into the open.
കൊറോണ നിപ നേരും നുണയും നേരിടേണ്ടതെങ്ങനെ? എറണാകുളം ടൗൺ ഹാളിൽ ശ്രീ പ്രശാന്ത് ഭൂഷൺ പ്രസംഗിച്ചതിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ: താൻ പറയാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത് എങ്ങനെയാണ് തനിക്ക് നേച്ചർ കെയറിലേക്ക് താല്പര്യം വന്നതെന്നും അതേപോലെ തന്നെ അലോപ്പതി ചികിത്സയിൽ എങ്ങനെയാണ് സംശയം തോന്നിയത് എന്നുമാണ്. കോവിഡ് മഹാമാരി എല്ലാവർക്കും ഒരു യഥാർത്ഥ സത്യമാണ് തുറന്നു കാണിക്കുന്നതെന്നാണ് അദ്ദേഹം പറയുന്നത്. ആദ്യമേ കോവിഡ് വൈറസ് ഒരു ബാഡ് വൈറസിൽ നിന്നും വന്നതാണെന്നും എങ്കിൽ പതിയെ ഈ ഒരു തിയറി തെറ്റാണെന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കുകയും പിന്നീട് എന്താണ് ഇതിന് പുറകിലെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഈ ഒരു വൈറസ് മനുഷ്യനിർമ്മിതമായി US ലബോറട്ടറിയിൽ രൂപം കൊണ്ടതെന്നുമാണ്. ആ ടെക്നോളജി പിന്നീട് വുഹാൻ ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂട്ട് ഓഫ് വൈറോളജിയിലേക്ക് ട്രാൻസ്മിറ്റ് ചെയ്യുകയും പിന്നീട് അവിടെ വെച്ചത് ലീക്കായി സ്പ്രെഡ് ആവുകയും ചെയ്തു എന്നാണ്. ആദ്യമേ അവർ ഈ ഒരു സത്യം മറച്ചു വെക്കാനാണ് ശ്രമിച്ചത്. കോവിഡ് മഹാമാരി മൂർച്ഛിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നപ്പോൾ അതിനെ തുടർന്ന് ലോക്ക്ഡൗൺ പ്രഖ്യാപിക്കുകയും ജനസമ്പർക്കം നിഷേധിക്കുകയും ചെയ്തു. പിന്നീട് വാക്സിൻ എടുക്കേണ്ട ഘട്ടത്തിലേക്ക് വരെ അത് എത്തി. പ്രോപ്പർ മെഡിക്കൽ ട്രയൽസ് ഒന്നുമില്ലാതെ തന്നെ വാക്സിൻ ലോകമെമ്പാടും എത്തിച്ചേർന്നിരുന്നു. അപ്പോഴേക്കും എല്ലാവരും വാക്സിൻ എടുക്കണമെന്ന അവസ്ഥയിലേക്കും വന്നു. എല്ലാവരും നിർബന്ധിതമായി തന്നെ വാക്സിൻ എടുക്കേണ്ടി വന്നു. സ്വീഡൻ ഒഴികെയുള്ള മിക്ക രാജ്യങ്ങളിലും ഇങ്ങനെ തന്നെയാണ് കോവിഡിനെതിരെ പ്രവർത്തിച്ചത്. വാക്സിൻ എടുത്തത് മൂലം പിന്നീടുള്ള സ്ഥിതി നോക്കിയാൽ വാക്സിൻ എടുത്തവരിൽ മിക്ക ചെറുപ്പക്കാരിലും രോഗങ്ങൾ കണ്ടു തുടങ്ങുകയും അവർക്ക് കാർഡിയാക് അറസ്റ്റ് വരികയും അവർ മരണപ്പെടുകയും ചെയ്ത ഒരു കാഴ്ചയാണ് നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ സാധിച്ചത്. തീർച്ചയായും അത് വാക്സിന്റെ പ്രശ്നമാണെന്നാണ് ശ്രീ പ്രശാന്ത് ഭൂഷൺ നമ്മോട് പറഞ്ഞത്.
I am very happy and honored to be asked to inaugurate this Nature Cure district camp. And I am happy to see so many people here despite the fact I know that it's raining and also that it's a major festival today. Despite this, so many people being here is a very, very good sign. My first, you can say, experience with Nature Cure happened when my mother had cancer. She had gone through 2 rounds of chemotherapy. The cancer still kept growing, and that it was at that stage that I decided to explore alternative medicine. And when I was researching various alternative cures for cancer, I came across one Gerson therapy. Dr. Max Gerson was a German physician who was a very famous allopathic physician, but who developed a diet therapy or a diet cure for tuberculosis in the 1920s and 30s, just after the First World War. He became quite famous, and his diet therapy was proved to be very, very effective for curing tuberculosis at a time when there was no allopathic treatment. There were no antibiotics for tuberculosis. Thereafter, when Hitler came to power, he had to shift to America. He had to migrate to America. And in America at that time, in the 40s and 50s, there was a lot of cancer. Cancer had become a major problem. And therefore he decided to try his diet therapy for cancer. And he kept modifying it. And before he died in 1959, he found that his modified diet therapy was quite effective, at least for certain kinds of cancers. And he published a book before he died called An Advance uh, a diet therapy for the cure of advanced cancer. He died in 1959, but thereafter his youngest daughter set up this Gerson Research Center in California, and we took my mother there. But he published this book. In that book, he has narrated how he was prevented at every stage by the whole sort of mafia of allopathic pharmaceutical industry from trying his or from propagating his diet therapy for curing cancer. And eventually the American Medical Association got various laws passed. American Medical Association, which is dominated by allopathic physicians or completely by allopathic physicians, they got laws passed in various states in America that any doctor who is treating cancer by any other method except surgery, radiation and chemotherapy would be liable for medical misconduct and would be both liable for damages as well as criminally liable. That whole experience, of course, my mother's treatment did not last too long. It seemed that for 1 year the cancer had stopped growing after she went on this Gerson therapy. But after that it came back and she passed away soon thereafter. But this was because she had gone to this diet therapy, the Gerson therapy, after 2 full rounds of chemotherapy. So her body was full of toxins. The Gerson diet is essentially a naturopathic diet of just fruits and salads, uncooked fruits and salads, and a lot of juices. That's in essence the Gerson diet. And along with that, they used to put a lot of emphasis on enema, especially coffee enema. I am narrating the story only to tell you how I got interested in nature cure and how I became and why I became somewhat suspicious of allopathic medicine. But what has happened in the recent pandemic, COVID pandemic, is an eye-opener for everybody, which is very, very glaring for everybody to see. See, if we look at this whole pandemic, the government's response to it, we find that first the story was spread that COVID had originated from a bat virus which had somehow got transferred to humans. It had become possible to infect that bat virus on humans, to infect humans with that bat virus. Now eventually that whole story or the theory has turned out to be false, and what has come out, and it can no longer be denied today, is that COVID originated in a laboratory in America. That technology was transferred to this Wuhan Institute of Virology, and there it emerged and went out into the open. So they first tried to hide the fact that COVID had in fact, this virus had in fact originated in a laboratory. It was a human-created, laboratory-created virus, and in fact it was created in the United States and thereafter exported to this Wuhan Institute Institute of Virology, from where it escaped. Second, we were told that this virus is very, very lethal, that anybody who gets infected by this virus has a 5% chance of dying. we were told that it was very infectious and very lethal. And so, we were all told that everybody should go into lockdown. That people should not meet each other, that everyone should wear masks, that schools should be closed. And then they started saying that the only possible treatment for this is a vaccine. And eventually, within a year of this COVID coming out, without any proper trials, medical trials of the vaccine, vaccines for this COVID were released across the world, including in India. And then vaccine mandates were issued saying that everybody must take this vaccine, even children must take this vaccine, and those who do not take this vaccine will not be allowed access to various services, etc. So effectively they were forcing everybody, including children, to take these vaccines. Now if we look at the public health response of various governments, and this was the public health response to COVID virtually across the world, except a few countries like Sweden, etc., who did not go into this hard lockdown that was imposed in India as well as in most countries in the world. Most countries followed the same policy, and this policy was dictated by WHO, by the sort of American main medical advisor on this COVID in America, one man called Dr. Anthony Fauci, by all the regulatory authorities in America, the Food and Drug Administration, the Center for Disease Control in America, as well as the Indian regulatory authorities and the Indian government. Everybody was almost ad idem in sync with this whole theory that this is a very lethal virus, very infectious virus. If you get this virus, there is a good chance that you will die, you will have breathing problems, you need to get hospitalized. Schools were closed, lockdowns were imposed, sometimes schools remained closed for almost 2 years. And then these vaccines were brought out and everybody was asked to take these vaccines. What we know now that 3.5 years of almost 4 years have elapsed since this virus came, there is a lot more that we know about it now. We know now that it was nowhere near, this virus was nowhere near as lethal as the various governments told us. The average mortality, second, that the lethality or the dangerousness of this virus was very, very greatly correlated to your age. Meaning that if you were a child, say below 12 years of age, the chance of your dying due to the virus was not even 1 in a million. If you were a child below 18 years of age, the chance of your dying was also not more than 1.5 million. If you were an adult below 40 years of age, the chance of your dying was less than 1 in 100,000. If you were an adult, say under 70 years of age, then also your chance of dying due to this virus was less than 1 in 10,000. It was only those very old people or sick people who had a significant chance of dying, something like 1 in 1,000. That is also not very high, but yes, they did have some significant chance of dying, but only if you were very old or you were very sick. And yet, despite the fact that children were hardly affected by this virus, every country was told that children must not only receive the vaccine, children must wear masks, but they closed down schools. And in many countries, schools remained closed for 1 year, sometimes up to 2 years, thereby greatly damaging the education of children. Lockdowns were imposed for months altogether in most countries. Lockdowns did enormous. Now we know that these lockdowns did much, much more harm than good. Whether they did any good or not in terms of preventing infection, COVID infection, is highly questionable. But we all know that lockdowns destroyed the lives and livelihoods of crores of people, particularly the poor. Now, one question that is asked is that in the second wave of COVID, we know that a lot of people died. Second wave came in 2021, sometime in mid 2000, April, May 2021. Yes, it is true that a lot of people died in the second wave of COVID. Now the question that is asked is, if COVID was not as lethal as the governments were claiming it to be, why did so many people die? I have my own view about it. My view is that when you tell people that, look, COVID is so dangerous that if you get COVID, you are likely to die. You are likely to become very sick and you are likely to die. You have already made them psychologically so weak that if they are told, and people were being asked to go continuously test themselves by this stupid testing method in which you could find some trace of this COVID after multiplying the virus in the sample by billions and billions of times, then even if some trace was found, you were declared to be COVID positive.